Thank you for tuning in, coming to you live from Nairobi and welcoming our viewers in Kenya and across the world. My name is Ivy Khavai and this is the Daily Connect. This program dives into in-depth discussions on education, arts and culture, sports, and health matters affecting the public both directly and indirectly. Before we discuss today's main topic, let's look at the major stories making headlines. A sum of over 100 million United States dollars intended for the Central Bank of Liberia have vanished without a trace. Hundreds have joined in protest in the country's capital, Monrovia, in anger at the disappearance of the money, which accounts for 5% of the country's gross domestic product. The money vanished from the country's main port in shipping containers, and although the government has launched an investigation, angry citizens cry for help as they insist that international organizations such as the FBI and the IMF be actively involved in the investigation. The year 2019 to 2028 has been declared the Decade of Peace by the United Nations. This is in honor of the former South Africa's anti-apartheid hero and democratically elected president Nelson Mandela. A peace summit is expected to be held in Mandela's honor, where the global icon's role in fighting for justice and peace around the world will be recognized. In his honor, his 1.9-meter statue will be erected in the organization's headquarters. Over 150 speakers will participate in the Peace Summit, where world leaders will address the planet's pressing problems such as war, poverty, disease, migration, and climate change. Just 21 weeks into the year 2018 and we have had 23 shootouts in schools in the United States. California, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, and Maryland are among the states that were really affected. There have been many deaths and a lot more students were injured, causing a major breach of security which created a sense of students' unrest among schools. Today's program will take a look into students' unrest and how it has affected our students both physically and emotionally. After the shootings that happened in the United States, most students feel unsafe in school and parents are worried about the safety of their children. Now, in our country, Kenya, there has been a recurrent chain of events from schools countrywide. More than 33 schools witnessed unrest and 17 of them closed down amidst heightened tension, thus interrupting the study pattern despite national examinations being closed. There also has been reports of child battery and bullying in schools. With such devastating news gracing our channels, how will we secure our children's future? On our education segment today, I will be bringing in the idea of homeschooling, and my question is, would you homeschool your child? Engage with me using my social media platforms at Khavai on Twitter, at Khavai Ivy on Facebook, and you can also use our SMS line, which is 44324, as we discuss homeschooling. Homeschooling is slowly becoming an option for parents with the recent uproar of students' unrest in schools. I can see some comments on my Twitter, and at Kotemeri says, I have been debating on homeschooling as a young parent and I am glad that you are covering the subject. Well, thank you very much, Mary, for that. I know this topic is yet to be embraced, and that is why we will be demystifying homeschooling. I will have some guests on the show later on, but first I do have my correspondent Timothy Zawadi with a feature story.
As the country begins to embrace the new education system 26333 as opposed to the current system 844 that has been there since 1985, some parents are even moving further away and opt to educate their children from home.
I am definitely for homeschooling my children. Yeah. I think homeschooling is the future. Well, I wasn't homeschooled myself, but I think I would want to homeschool my children. And it seems like the best option.
Homeschooling is the process of educating school-aged children at home rather than at school. Most parents who homeschool argue that the system teaches content for mastery, which limits ability and potential because it is geared toward passing of exams, whilst homeschooling teaches concepts and life skills.
No, I'm not for the idea of homeschooling. My kid must enroll in a school because I get to understand that when kids go to school, they get to interact with others, and you know those kids in that school, they are not of the same background. So the kid will get to know that there are different lifestyles, there are different levels of living, and they get to have that social life. But when you have your kid under homeschooling, that kid is always around you. So the kid will cling to you and you'll just get to know only the family members. They will not get to know about the outside world. And you know, when a kid grows up like that, and maybe when they are done with that homeschooling, maybe they want to go for another level, the kid will go and then they get shocked, they get to know a new life. So, and that's why you find most kids, they are getting lost in this generation. This kid has not gotten used to this social life, and then they go out there, they get new people, new social life, and they get spoiled, and you start blaming yourself as a parent. What happened to my kid? What went wrong? But you don't know you're the cause of that because you didn't let them interact with other kids out there.
I know if the society is ready to embrace homeschooling, because it's such a huge responsibility. Yeah, nowadays a lot of people are going to school to be, what do you call it, career women, you know, and no one has the time to sit around and homeschool their children. But I feel like it is something the society should embrace, you know, because growing up, yeah, my mom used to make these comments of how she wished she knew earlier, then she would have homeschooled me and my sister, but then, you know, it's too late. So I wouldn't want that to happen to me, you know. Of course, it's not a point of regret that she got to, but it's just that place of, I wish I knew earlier, and I don't want to get to that place where I'll say, I wish I knew, but just take the action, because it is my responsibility as a person to teach my children and to be there for them. So it's something that society should embrace. Also, it looks like an anomaly, because a lot of people, when you tell them anything about homeschooling, they think your children will grow up to be social misfits, or people who don't fit into the society, because first of all, they don't know how to relate with other children, which is a lie. I mean, a lot of my thinking, or a lot of what I think I know, is built up on a lot of what I have heard from people, you know, because I've had friends who have been homeschooled, relatives who have homeschooled their children, and their children are not social misfits, or they are not those people in society as such, but they're people who we can relate to, laugh, go to malls with, you know. It's not something guaranteed that your child will grow up to be someone who is awkward in the society. Also, it depends on how you teach them, considering that I'm not an awkward person. So I don't think my children will be awkward people. Also, it's not just based on a school system or a school environment that children grow up not to be awkward, since just because they've interacted with other children. I don't think that is something to cast stone on.
Contrary to what people think, homeschooling continues to grow popularity in Nairobi and across the country. Although homeschooling has been around since the 1970s, and we have had famous celebrities such as Ryan Gosling, Vanessa, and Serena Williams go through this system, the idea is yet to be embraced in the Kenyan context. In the case of Ryan Gosling, he was homeschooled because he went through bullying and could not spell until the age of 10. There have been cases of bullying in our schools over the previous years, and although it has subsided, the recent cases of homeschooling strikes and banning of schools are alarming. And who would want to put their children in such a situation?
Growing up, you know, I went to high school. I'm privileged not to have been bullied, because I went to the same school with my sister. But when I hear the stories of other people, you know, maybe other children may not be as fortunate as I am, because bullying is there. Like, it's so rampant. Like, you hear children burning schools, and then, first of all, as in, I don't like this story for corporal punishment. At TCG, teachers are beating children the way they want. Kwanza, the other day I was just scrolling through my Twitter, and then I saw someone just mentioned and asked a question about tell me some memories you remember about high school, and, you know, all these things. And yani people's stories were so gory and so hurtful. I wouldn't want any of my children to go through that. So definitely homeschooling. Also, I want, like, it's a passion of mine to be a stay-at-home mom. People would call it a kept wife, but no, I just want to be like, I want to teach my children, you know, let them grow with me as I grow with them. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I want to be there for my children 24/7, learn from them as they learn from me, because I don't want to be those parents who leave their children to teachers or for teachers to do their work or something like that. Yeah, I just want to be there for my children as a teacher and as their mother at the same time.
Welcome back. This is the Daily Connect with me, Ivy Khavai. The discussion today is on homeschooling, and you can reach me on my social media platforms at Khavai on Twitter, at Khavai Ivy on Facebook, and you can send an SMS in the number on your screen, that is 44324. And now I'm joined live by our reporter Timothy Zawadi. Timothy, if you can hear me, after doing the feature and getting the different kind of reactions that you have been receiving, do you think that people are welcoming the idea of homeschooling?
Now I can hear you clearly, Ivy. Now the issue of homeschooling is really a matter of give and take. I believe it works if your child has a talent, be it dancing or acting, that you would love to nurture in them, as well as educate them in a manner that they deserve. On the other hand, it tends to deprive their social life according to most people. However, with the situations going on in the country right now and the shootings previously in the United States, it is safer if most parents will have the liberty to have homeschooling as an option for them. I will personally take homeschooling as an option. Back to you, Ivy.
Thank you very much, Timothy, for that. Now, that is expected when a new idea is being familiarized. I will be having some guests later on in the program, so be sure to leave no stone unturned. The conversation is ongoing, and Wanjiru on Facebook is saying, homeschooling is just a show-off from parents because there are still prestigious schools such as Braeburn and Brookhouse Group of Schools. Therefore, parents should stop shielding their children from the world. That is such an interesting point of view. Remember to keep the conversation going. My social media platforms are at Khavai on Twitter, at Khavai Ivy on Facebook, and our SMS line is 44324. Homeschooling continues to be a topic of discussion, and one of the major arguments is that the education system limits ability and potential because it is geared towards passing of exams and not the concept of obtaining life skills, which will be tagged along throughout the child's life as they grow. In studio, I have Kanut Waswa, a parent who actively homeschools his children. I also have Hesbon Owila, a parent whose thoughts on homeschooling we'll get to hear. And lastly, I have Mrs. Mabel Odima, a lecturer in Daystar University and a parent who homeschools her children. Now, thank you for joining me today. Mr. Kanotwa, so I'll start with you. How did you decide on homeschooling as the right path for your children?
I decided to go into homeschooling because among the options that I looked at, it was the most viable option. And when I talk about the options I was looking at, it's just the fact that my wife and I asked ourselves, what do we want to get at the end of our children's education? And that determined the path in which we're going to take the children. And so the 5 main deliverables that we had as a family are: number 1, Christian education. We needed to give our children a strong foundation of the faith, to teach them to love the Lord and to know the Lord and work with the Lord. The second one was gifts and talents. Our conviction as a family is education is supposed to nurture your nature. And every child is born with inherent gifts and talents, and it is our work as parents to bring out and help to bring out those gifts and talents. And so we needed a system that was going to spend 80% of the time trying to see what gifts and talents do our children have. Are they artistic? Are they musical? Are they good with their hands? Are they sporty? Or are they academic? So that if they're academic, get a PhD. If they're sporty, go to a sports academy. If you're musical, go to Berkeley Music School. And so that was our second reason. The third reason was the whole character question, because education is supposed to build a foundation for a family, which builds the foundation for the nation. And when we look at the biggest challenge in our country today, it's a character question. And as I mentioned earlier about a Christian foundation, the Bible says, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge. There's a reason in 2 Peter, the Bible tells us that knowledge comes after virtue. And the reason is, if knowledge comes before virtue, you just become a smart thief. And being Kenyans, I don't need to explain that. The fourth reason was self-esteem. We needed a system that was going to help our children to develop a self-esteem that was going to place them on a platform where in their generation they're going to change the narrative for this continent. Why is that important? Because narratives matter. And for the longest time, we have had narratives of aid, we have had narratives of dependency, we have had narratives of us as a continent waiting for someone else to come and help us unlock our potential, which has never happened. And so we needed a narrative that was going to put us at the helm of unlocking the value of this continent that God put us in. And so that was important, self-esteem.
And having homeschooled your children, do you think that the society around you already embraces homeschooling?
When we started homeschooling, a lot of people had lots of questions, starting with family. And mainly because all they knew was school. Kids are born and then kids go to school. And in the heart of hearts, they meant well. No, it meant that my wife and I had to do lots of explanations just to explain the difference between schooling and education and why we chose the option that we went for. But the second thing we had to deal with is lots of societal expectations. I talked earlier about socialization. And for a lot of us who are socialized that go to school, get an education, get competencies, skills and knowledge, then go out and work. And here we are, my wife is a university graduate of food, nutrition and dietetics. She can work anywhere, then she chooses to be a stay-at-home mom, which in our context is equal to housewife. And her family didn't understand, so they took their daughter to school to become a housewife. And we had lots of explanations to make, especially to my mother-in-law. Fast forward, as I said, our firstborn is now 13. My mother-in-law has become our biggest cheerleader in our homeschooling journey, and simply because she has seen how the children have turned out. In fact, we make a joke because the other day she was telling my wife's brothers to tell their wives to stay home and homeschool their children. And so it just explains how once society is able to understand and to see the results of homeschooling, because they mean well for the children, they are also stakeholders in the lives of all the children. They are able to see that this is the option that we have chosen, and the option actually makes a lot of sense. So that has been our adventure.
And to you, Mr. Hesbon Owila, what is your take on homeschooling, and would you view it as an option for your young children who are yet to join school?
Well, you'd say that maybe a number of people have entertained that thought, that the other option to all these issues surrounding schools, strikes, banning of schools, juvenile truancy, that a few parents have, entertained the idea of homeschooling. But then you come to look at it, it's one, it's not cheap. Number two, it's a gamble that not many parents, can get into. So it's gaining traction as an elite thing, and I would say that it is increasingly being accepted by an elite class of individuals in Kenya. who can find a way of getting their kids to be homeschooled and be provided with some of the best facilities. And definitely it's not something that any other Mkereketo outside there, can think of doing to their kids. The common man outside there, has very little choice other than to get into a system that is tried, tested, and established with or without its many issues.
Now, Mrs. Mabel Odima, you are a lecturer in Daystar University, and yet you still homeschool your children. What do you think the society is already embracing homeschooling?
The idea in this millennium actually is being embraced. Last Saturday I was in a meeting where my daughter was graduating, and we had over 1,000 to 2,000 homeschoolers. So it's something that is gaining momentum, and I think we need to raise awareness and help people who want to practice it see they can test it on a small scale with different children and see if it works.
And having homeschooled your children and also being a lecturer, do you think that there is a big difference between the two modes of education?
There's a big difference because the homeschooling outfit that I was using is one called Accelerated Christian Education. It's a specific outfit that is learner-oriented. It focuses on the individual at their own level, and it personalizes the process of study to the individual. So it's very unique. It depends on the type of child, their personality, level of discipline. It's so different from the normal lectures that we go through, which are basically 844 oriented. SE is very different from the 844 approach because it rewards potential, it rewards goal setting, it rewards personality, it rewards so many things outside the academics. The curriculum is very clearly defined. The student can follow through on their own, and they just need slight supervision at the scoring level. But a disciplined student would enjoy going through the SE program. But to say the least, SE students fit into Daystar somewhat very well. I think it's because of the Christian background that exists in Daystar, and they fit in the system well because they're self-disciplined students. They don't wait for the teacher to learn.
What skills, or rather special gifts, do you think that children who are homeschooled necessarily get as opposed to using the normal education system?
Okay, just like in any system, when you talk about schooling, there are certain skills that are expected at the end of someone's schooling. Basic skills is what we call reading and writing skills. Once you know how to read and write, you can read and write anything. It's literally an open check. And so homeschooling gives those skills. The other skills, as I mentioned, is soft skills and emotional intelligence, so that you can be able to relate with people. But for us, the other things we have added are the fact that by the time we are done with the homeschooling, we expect our children to have basic personal finance skills, how to manage money. And so as part of our schooling is our children and their own money. Working in the home, washing the car, washing and managing the office, and then teaching them how to manage that money, because personal finance is one of the most important skills that anyone would ever need in life. The other thing that we have settled about is they must have a life skill, and by life skill I mean a skill which they can use to earn a living by the time they are 12. And so we sat down with our children and had the conversation, and as a family we settled on 3 skills. So By the time our children are 12, all of them are expected to be expert swimmers and lifesavers. That means they can teach how to swim and they can be lifesavers in a swimming pool, which can earn them money. The second thing is music. So they can be music instructors. They started with recorder and did recorder book 1 and 2. Our eldest daughter has now picked on the flute, and the other 2 children have picked on the guitar. And music is a life skill. And the third thing that we have settled about is for them to be able to learn how to keep a home.
Having had the type of discussion we just had, I believe that most, if not all, of your questions have been answered. I'd like to thank the experts who just graced our program for such detailed information, better yet, from experience. The discussion, however, does not die down. @Wamboi on Twitter says, "Thank you for the show. Most of the questions I had have been answered, and I'm very grateful." Thank you very much, Wamboi, for participating in the show. Homeschooling has been extensively discussed in our program today, and it has been quite informative. I believe that homeschooling should be embraced, not to completely overrule the current education system, but to be there as an option for parents. There has been enough cases of students causing havoc even in the university level. Therefore, parents should have the freedom to choose. I believe that parents make the best decisions for their children, therefore they have the expertise to know which system of education suits their children best. That is all I had for you today. In case you joined us late, you can catch the full episode on YouTube on my channel @Khavai Ivy. Like, comment, share and subscribe. Until next time, I have been your host, Ivy Khavai, and this is the Daily Connect.